Okay, let's start with the first problem. The question is y equal x squared plus 4x plus 1. I have to rewrite it in vertex form using completing square. So again, remember, when I have y equal x squared plus 4x plus 1, I'm going to put a bracket around the two terms with x. Then I'm going to factor out the leading coefficient of x squared, which is 1. So there is nothing to factor. Then I'm going to divide the coefficient of x by 2, which is going to be 4 divided by 2, which is 2. 2 squared, which is 4. Add 4, subtract 4. So I get x squared plus 4x plus 4 minus 4, close bracket, plus 1. Now, if you take these three terms, I can see that x squared, the square root is x. 4, the square root is 2. And since this is addition, so I can write this guy as x plus 2 squared. And there is a negative 4 here, so it comes out plus 1. So the answer is x plus 2 squared minus 3. Okay? So this is part 1. Now for b, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to put a bracket beside the two terms with x. Now the leading coefficient of x squared is negative 1 over 2, so I factor out negative 1 over 2. Negative 1 over 2 divided by negative 1 over 2 is 1, so I get x squared. Now your question is that what is 4 divided by negative 1 over 2? So I'm going to do it here. 4 divided by negative 1 over 2 is the same as 4 over 1 divided by negative 1 over 2. Now for division, I'm going to flip the second fraction and then multiply. So I get 4 over 1 times 2 over negative 1. So I get 8 over negative 1, which is negative 8. So I'm going to write this guy as x squared minus 8x, minus 9. Now I can go ahead, divide negative 8 by 2, which is negative 4, square it, which is going to be 16, and then subtract 16. So I'm going to write this guy as negative 1 over 2 x squared negative 8x plus 16 minus 16, and then minus 9 here. Now, I'm going to look at these three terms. X squared, the square root is x. 16 is 4. And since I have a negative here, then it's going to be x minus 4 squared. So I'm going to have negative 1 over 2 x minus 4 squared minus 16 minus 9. Now I'm going to expand negative 1 over 2 inside the bracket. I get negative 1 over 2 x minus 4 squared. Negative 1 over 2 times negative 16 gives you 16 over 2, which is 8 minus 9. And then this gives you negative 1 over 2 x minus 4 squared minus 1. Now, okay, the next question. We are supposed to find the maximum minimum of this quadratic. Now, there is nothing mentioned that you have to use completing squares or quadratic formula or whatever. So I would prefer to use vertex form of the quadratic. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use v, the x coordinate of the vertex is minus b over 2a, which is going to be minus b, which is minus 8, over 2a, which is 2 times negative 1, which is going to be negative 8 over negative 2, which is going to be 4. But the story doesn't end here, because this is the x coordinate of the vertex. Now I have to find the y coordinate and decide is it maximum or minimum. So the y coordinate is negative x squared, so negative 4 squared, negative 8 times x, which is 4 plus 3, which is going to give me 16, minus 16, minus 32, plus 3, which if you simplify this one, is going to give you So this one is positive. So the answer is negative 16 plus 32 plus 3, which is going to give you 19. Now, we know that the max or mean is 19, but we have to decide, is it max or mean? To do that one, I'm going to look at the leading coefficient is negative 1. I know when it's negative, parabola is going to open downward, which is going to be like this. So the point is going to be the maximum. So 19 is maximum. Okay, the next question, a basketball is thrown in the air. The equation of the basketball, the height of the basketball is given here. You are supposed to sketch the graph, determine the maximum height, and when does it happen, and also how high is the basketball after 2 seconds. Okay? To plot the graph, I'm going to find the vertex form of the equation, so I'm going to say v sub x is minus b, which is minus 14.7, divided by 2a, which is 2 times negative 4.9. If you simplify this one, you get 1.5. Okay, so the maximum occurs after 1.5 seconds. To find the maximum height, I'm going to find v of y. It's going to give me negative 4.9, 1.5 squared, plus 14.7, 1.5, plus 1.9. If you simplify this one, you are going to get 12.93 meters. So knowing these two information, and also the y-intercept is the constant here, which is 1.9. I can go ahead and plot the graph, so I'm going to just roughly plot the graph as the following. We know that the maximum is 12.93, so this is 12.93, and it happens after 1.5 seconds, so this is 1.5. I know the vertex is here and it opens downward, and the y-intercept is 1.9, which is here. So my graph, if this is a y-intercept, this is the axis of symmetry. The same distance to the right is going to give me this point. I'm going to connect them together and I get a graph like this one. So this is for sketching the graph. Now the next part of the question, part B, says determine the maximum height and the time it takes. You can see that the maximum height is 12.93, which is the y-coordinate of the vertex. And when does it happen is 1.5 seconds, which is the x-coordinate of the vertex. How high is the basketball after 2 seconds? It's very simple. You just substitute t equal to 2 in the equation. You get plus 14.7 times 2 plus 1.9, and this one is going to give you 11.7 meters. Okay, the next one is to solve this equation with all the coefficients, decimal values. We use the quadratic formula. The formula says that x1 and x2 is equal to minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Now, d, which is the discriminant, is equal to b squared minus 4ac, which is going to be 0.8 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 0.9, times c, which is negative 0.02. If you simplify this one, which I don't have the value here, you put it back in the equation to find x1 and x2, okay? Minus b is negative 0.8 plus or minus b squared minus 4ac, okay, is that 0.8 squared minus 4 times negative 0.9 times negative 0.02 divided by 2a, which is 2 divided by negative 0.9. This is going to give you two solutions. If you go by the positive one, you get 0.03. If you go by negative one, you get you get 0.86. Okay, the next question is, we have to find x and the dimensions of the rectangle. So the area of the rectangle is 130 square centimeter. We know with the hint which is given here, the area is length times width, so I can write A is 2x times 3x plus 2. Now, we know that the area has to be 130, so I can write 2x times 3x plus 2 is equal to 130. I'm going to expand this guy and bring this guy to the left. So from here I get 6x squared. 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times 2 is going to give me 4x. Plus, minus 130, when it moves to the left, it becomes negative. Now, this is a quadratic equation, and I can solve it using quadratic formula. So I can say that x12 is minus b plus or minus b squared, which is 16, minus 4ac minus 4 times 6 times negative 130, divided by 2a, which is 2 times 6. Now, positive and negative, with the positive root, I get 4.3. For the negative, I get negative 5. Since x cannot be negative because of this guy, 2x, because 2 times negative 5 gives me negative 10, and lengths can be negative, so this is thrown away. So the answer is 4.3. But now I have to find the dimension. So the dimension is 2x, which is 2 times 4.3, which is going to give me 8.6, and 3x plus 2, which is 3 times 4.3 plus 2, which is going to give me 14.9 centimeters. Okay, you're supposed to find a positive number that is 5 less than 7 times of its reciprocal. Now, reciprocal of any number is the number which is flipped. Okay? So let's assume that number to be x. So if I translate this guy, okay, I know that the number is equal to 5 less than 7 times its reciprocal. So 7 times the reciprocal of number is 1 over x, and it's 5 less, so minus 5. So x is equal to 7 times 1 over x minus 5. Now, to solve this one, we never talked about rational functions. So I have to get rid of x here. To get rid of x, I just multiply everything by x. So x times x gives me x squared. 1 over x times x gives me 1, so it's 7. And negative 5 times x gives me negative 5x. Then I move everything to the left. I get x squared plus 5x minus 7 is equal to 0. Now, if you use quadratic formula, I'm going to write that x, 1, and 2 is equal to negative 5 plus or minus b squared, 5 squared, minus 4ac. A is 1 and c is negative 7, divided by 2a, which is 2 times 1. If you solve this one, if you take it the positive root, you get 4.3. If you get if you get the positive root, you get 1.14. If you get the negative, is negative 6.14. So we could find two numbers which satisfy this condition which is given. Okay, the next question is to determine how many real roots you have and then find the roots by factoring. No quadratic, no vertex form, factoring. To find how many roots I have, I'm going to use the discriminant, which is d, which is b squared, negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a times c. If you simplify this one, you get 144, which is greater than 0, so you know there are two real roots. Now, to solve this one using factoring, okay, what I have to do is I have to use decomposition method because 5 is not 1. The leading coefficient is other than 1. So I'm going to say AC is 5 times -7, which is -35. And B is -2. Now the question is that what are those two numbers that they add up to -2 and they multiply to -35?
-7 and 5.
-7 and 5, because -7 times 5 is -35, -7 plus 5 is -2. So I can decompose the middle one into -7 and -5, plus 5x. So I'm going to write 5x squared, -7x, plus 2x, -7 is equal to 0. I take the first two terms and the last two terms. I can factor out x from the first two terms. I get 5x minus 7. Okay, so the mistake is that this is really 5. So this becomes x times 5x minus 7, and this guy is 5x minus 7 too. Then I take 5x minus 7, factor it out. I get 5x minus 7 times. From here I get x. From here I get 1 is equal to 0. As we said before, the product of two numbers is 0, so either or both they have to be 0. So from this I get 5x minus 7 is 0. So x is 7 over 5. Or x plus 1 is 0. I get x is -1. Okay, the next question. You have water which is shooting off a nozzle which is buried 30 centimeters under the ground. So this is my ground. Okay? And the nozzle of the water, let's say, is here. And the water is being shot outside and it hits the ground. Okay? So this is how it works. Now, the equation of the height of the water is given here. The first thing, if you look at the equation, the y-intercept is negative 0.3. So this means that the coordinate system that you pick, okay, you have to be careful that the y-intercept is negative. So the right way of picking the coordinate system is something like this one. So this is going to be my t, this is going to be my h. And this one, which is going to be here, okay, the best one is to choose something like this one, sorry, not this one. Because now the y-intercept is here, which is negative 0.3. And this is my coordinate system. So my graph looks like this one. Now, the question is that for how long is the drop of water in the air? Meaning, tell me how long from here to here when it hit the ground. I want this time. So to find this one, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make h of t equal to 0, because when it hits the ground here, h is 0. So I have to solve this guy. Negative 4.9 t squared plus 7.6 t minus 0.3 equal to 0. Now, I'm not going to go through the quadratic formula. You already seen enough. There are going to be two solutions here. 0.04 and 1.51 seconds. Now, you may say, okay, what are these times for? The 0.04 is the time that it takes for the water drop to come from here to this point.
To the surface level.
Okay? To the surface level. Excellent. And 1.1 is the time that it hits here. Okay? Now, the question is, how long does it take for the water to reach the ground level? So the answer is 0.04 seconds. Now, part B, it says how long the water drop is in the air. This part is not going to be counted as in the air. This part is under the ground. In the air means from here to here. I want this part.
So you minus 2.
So you have to subtract 0.04 from 1.51. So for part B, the answer is 1.51 minus 0.04, which is going to give you 1.47 second. Now, sketch a graph of the path of. Okay, now I'm going to find the key points of the graph to sketch it. First of all, I'm going to find the vertex and the y-intercept. Okay, the vertex, I'm going to use the formula v of x is negative b, which is negative 7.6, over 2a, which is 2 times negative 4.9. If you simplify this one, you get 0.775 seconds. Now, if you put this number back in the equation, you are going to get v of h is 2.65 meters, which is going to tell you the maximum height of the water droplet. Now, the graph is going to look something like this. This is going to be your vertex. This point is going to be negative 0.3, which is your y-intercept. And this is your axis of symmetry, so you can go, the same amount to the right, and you can just connect the points together. This is going to be your graph of the h of t. The last part says determine the time intervals for which the drop of water is increasing and decreasing. Again, as I said, start going on the graph from the beginning to end. When you go up the graph from here to the vertex, x is increasing at the same time y is increasing, so you can say the function is increasing from this point to this point. But the one that I care is the one which is above the ground, so I'm going to find this point. This point, as we found, is 0.04, so I'm going to say the function is increasing when the time is between 0.04, which is this point, to the vertex, which we found to be 0.775. So in this interval from 0.04 to 0.775, the function is increasing, this part. Now for this section of the graph, as x is increasing, as you can see, y is decreasing. So this means that the function is decreasing. So I can say that t, if it's between 0.775 and this point, and we found that this point is 1.51 from part A, the time that it takes, to hit the ground, the function is decreasing. You have been given two graphs. You're supposed to find the equation of each parabola. First of all, I'm going to use the vertex form. To use the vertex form, if you remember, the vertex form is a times x minus h squared plus k, where h and k are the vertex, the coordinate of the vertex. If you look at here, the coordinate of the vertex are negative 1 and 1. This means that h is negative 1, y is 1. K is 1. So I can write y is equal to a times x minus 1 is plus 1 squared plus 1. Now, the problem is a here. To find a, I pick any point other than vertex. Do not use vertex because it's going to make 0 equal to 0, which doesn't solve anything for a. So I'm going to pick, let's say, the point negative 3 and 3. Negative 3 and 3, x is negative 3, y is 3. So I'm going to sub it back in the equation. I get 3 is equal to a times negative 3 plus 1 squared plus 1. Now, negative 3 plus 1 gives you negative 2 squared is 4. So it's going to be 4a plus 1. I'm going to move this one to the left. I get 4a is equal to 3 minus 1 is 2. So a is 1 over 2, which is equal to 0.5. So I get y is equal to 0.5 times x plus 1 squared plus 1. Now, when you have a problem like this one, make sure you check it against another point if you can see, for instance, 3 and 9, to see if the equation is correct. So if x is 3, then I put 3 back in the equation, I get 0.5, 3 plus 1 squared plus 1. 3 plus 1 is 4, 4 squared is 16, 0.5 times 16 is 8, 8 plus 1 is 9, which is going to be the point given here. So everything is correct. Now I'm going to do the last one. Again, the same thing. I'm going to write y is equal to a times x minus h. H is 3 because the vertex, the x coordinate is 3, so x minus 3 squared, plus k. K is 2 because the vertex is, again, the y coordinate is 2. Now to find a, I'm going to pick another point. Let's say the point is 5 and negative 2. So I'm going to say negative 2 is equal to a, 5 minus 3 squared plus 2. 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 squared is 4, so 4a. And when I move 2 to the left, I get negative 4, because negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. Divided by 4, I get a is negative 1. So y is equal to negative x minus 3 squared plus 2. Now, if you look at a is negative, the parabola opens downward, and the previous problem, a is positive, the parabola opens upward, and the last thing is, let's check this point. When x is 0, 0 minus 3 is going to give you negative 3. Negative 3 squared is 9 times negative here, negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7, which is going to be this.